Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to our National Predators Throwback 2000 franchise mode here in NHL 24. So, in last episode, we had free agency. We also started up the 2032 season, which is technically the 2007-08 season. And we're kind of having a little bit of a weird season so far. We are 20-15, 5-1, and we haven't been great in our last 10 games. It's been a very inconsistent start. However, we are in a pretty solid spot in terms of probably making the playoffs. Obviously, it's been a little bit of a weird year though, so I don't know if this team is still ready to basically take on the playoffs necessarily, but you can see we're the 5th seeded team currently in the Western Conference, so we're actually doing not too bad. Like, we're kind of the best of the bottom of the order, so there is a chance that we can definitely make it to the playoffs, but obviously we got to be wary about teams like the St. Louis Blues, for instance, who are outside of the playoffs and have games in hand. So obviously we just don't want to fall off too much in the second half that we end up missing the playoffs because of that. But should be interesting to see what ends up happening this year, because also the Vancouver Canucks are currently in the playoff spot. Obviously, the first number of years of the series, they were developing a team quite well, so I wouldn't be surprised if they make the playoffs, and they actually are a good team once they get into the postseason. But yeah, I'm hoping that we could somehow lock down this 5th spot, or if for some reason, if our team starts to actually win a lot more often, hopefully we could become one of the better teams in the top 4. Like, maybe 4th would probably be the best place to finish, because if you finish number 1, I feel like you don't usually get a chance to win the Stanley Cup too often. But if we're anywhere like 4, 3, or 2, maybe we have a better chance at winning this upcoming season. So should be interesting. We've also had some interesting player results so far in terms of our stats. Like, you can see, our top line has been fantastic. All of them are over point per game. But then afterwards, everybody is below point per game. So we're kind of heavily reliant on that top line. But I have been impressed with some of the other guys in the bottom 6 and stuff like that. I haven't been impressed with, like, say, guys like Mike Comrie in terms of his defensive play. But honestly, if our team starts to score more goals on that third line, maybe that will help his plus-minus get closer to being even. Maybe that's just a lack of goal scoring in the lineup. But yeah, the top line has been great so far, and then every other line has been kind of average or below average. Our defensive core hasn't been too bad in terms of plus-minus, so I am a little bit worried about some players that have bad plus-minuses on the forward group, those being Comrie and Winnick. They're kind of similar to what Marek Swatos was doing for us last year, so hopefully those guys improve a bit. Hopefully Joe Pavelski also improves a bit, because he's been a little bit lackluster as well. So yeah, just hoping a lot of guys pick up their defensive play if they possibly can, and then hopefully our top line continues to do what it did, because if it does, we should be able to have our top line being one of the best top lines in the entire league in terms of points, my guess. But anyways, before we simulate probably the rest of the season, maybe make some changes depending on what we think at certain times, let's get in your guys' comments and see what you guys have to say about last episode, and then we'll get into simulating some more and seeing if this team could be a little bit more consistent than it was last episode. So the first comment is from Michael Dose, who says, interesting that the free agent contracts are mostly 1 to 3 year deals, no big 6, 7, 8 year deals. And yeah, a lot of the free agent contracts weren't super long term. There was a couple ones that were, I think, long term, but most of the players, maybe it's because it was in like a little bit of an older free agent class, but they didn't really get anything above a 3 year deal. I wouldn't be surprised if it's due to age or something like that, because if I'm not mistaken, there was a lot of older guys in free agency, like Sergei Zubov and all that, so it kind of makes sense that those guys wouldn't be getting like 8 year deals at their age, so maybe that's probably why. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting that the AI decided to just keep it to short-term deals rather than locking up somebody for a long term. And the last and final comment is from Sanamataku, who says, so instead of Rafi Torres, San Jose gets another notorious goon from that era. Pavelski has been really disappointing throughout his tenure in Nashville. Were this not his final days of the final days of the series, you could think about moving him for additional veteran presence, but probably best to keep him around. And yeah, San Jose got who was it that San Jose picked up again? I can't remember who they picked up, but they definitely picked up another goon from around this time period. And yeah, Joe Pavelski has been disappointing. If the series was definitely going longer than this potential season, we would probably look to upgrade that third line center spot, because obviously it would be good to have like a third line center that's like an 83 overall, somebody that's maybe more of a veteran, because this team is pretty young. But I think just for the team in a sense, it's probably best just to hold on to Pavelski for now. He is technically, I guess, on pace for maybe his second best season of his career. I don't think he's going to pick up as much points as last year based on his numbers right now, but his plus minus has been very hit or miss so far. and he hasn't really done much for us either in the playoffs, like only 1 goal in 13 playoff games. So I really hope that he could get going a bit, but obviously if he doesn't, that would kind of suck. But it would be nice to have definitely a veteran third-line center, but I honestly don't know if it's something that we'd do in this series, because obviously Joe Pavelski should develop more, but he is kind of capping around an 81, but maybe we'll take a look and see at the trade deadline if there's somebody we could upgrade him with, but honestly, I don't know if we will. I don't know if we're going to make any trades in this season. We might honestly just keep the team the same and hope that it could kind of just lock down the 5th spot, because being number 5 in the standings isn't really that bad. But obviously, it's just been the inconsistencies right now with this team that I don't really know what they would do if they get to the playoffs again, because so far we've had no playoff success really. So I honestly don't know if this team's just going to continue to do that if we just continue to maintain the roster. So anyways, let's go to the end of January and see if we're actually going to start winning more games consistently, because if we do, that will definitely give us a better outcome probably in terms of our player stats, and maybe we won't have to actually make some adjustments to other lines. So let's go to this first 4 games and see what we do in these first 4 games. LA we win, Edmonton we win, Carolina we win, and Calgary we'll find out, because Brent Seabrook has been injured with an injured neck, which honestly I have no idea what that means. Maybe just a bruised neck or something, but let's just go replace player. And we win that one too, so we've won 4 in a row to start this episode. That's really, really good. That's definitely going to help us in the standings, and also because like I said, we got to watch out for St. Louis. That definitely helps us get a monumental edge a bit. We are now first place in the Central Division because of that. So yeah, that's a really nice little stretch from our team. Hopefully we could just keep that going. We got 4 games this week. We got another one against Calgary, St. Louis, New Jersey, and Montreal. Let's go to the end of this week, sure. See if we could win 4 more games in a row. And of course we lose the first one, and I say we lose the second one. See, like, that's the inconsistency. We go on a 4-game winning streak, and then we go maybe on a 4-game losing streak. You never know with this team what you're going to get. Let's take Orpik out, get Seabrook back in. There you go, perfect. That's good to go. New Jersey we lose as well, and Montreal we lose. Yep, we literally lost 4 in a row after we won 4 in a row. So there is still that inconsistency right now with this team, which is a bit worrisome. However, we are still first place in our division. We have played the most amount of games, though, which is worrisome, because the Blues are catching up really quickly out of nowhere, and then Detroit's close. So obviously, if we want to make the playoffs, we probably want to be in the 1 or 2 spot, but we could still make the playoffs as a 3rd-seeded team in our division, but we don't want to go on those type of losing streaks again if possible. So last 2 games of the month, we have Philly and Dallas. Can we win them? We win that one, and that one against Dallas was a loss. So we definitely still have that inconsistency factor, but maybe we'll find our consistency once we get to the playoffs, as people are starting to lose morale on this team as well, which is not ideal. One of those was Seabrook, one of them was Orpik. Orpik is going to be a scratch anyways, so he's not a big issue. Seabrook, we could probably find a way to get him more ice time, but I honestly don't know where. We have way too many right-handed defensemen at the moment. Yeah, I don't know if I could really do anything to get him more ice time. Alright, I had to sneeze for some reason, so let me go to the penalty kill. I was going to give Seabrook some more PK time and hope that that helps him a bit with his ice time demands. We'll take Jacques off the first unit, and we'll get Seabrook onto that spot, and I'll probably put Jacques onto the 3rd unit, I guess. Just trying to make everybody as happy as possible on this team, you know. So that should be good. That's the only little adjustment we're going to make. Let me take a look at the standings again here, because obviously we want to make the playoffs for sure. I know we're first place in our division, but it might not be for long. Yeah, Detroit's literally 2 points back of us with a game in hand, so we probably are pretty much tied in that sense. And St. Louis is very close to us as well. St. Louis has really shot up out of nowhere, though. So in the Western Conference, we're 4th now. Edmonton is 5th, but you look at Detroit, they're right there. St. Louis is not in a playoff spot at the moment as the 3rd seed. So we got to be really weary that we might fall out of a playoff spot here shortly, even though we're in 4th, which is kind of insane. So yeah, we got to be wary about that. Hopefully Dallas falls off a little bit, and then hopefully Calgary doesn't do much, because if Calgary gets back into playoff mix as well, that's going to make it harder. But we have less games played than the Flames do, so the Flames aren't as big of a threat. St. Louis is a big threat to knock us back out of the playoffs, and then hopefully Dallas falls off, so that way we could get 3 teams from our division instead into the postseason. At least that's what I'm kind of hoping for right now. All right, so I guess we'll continue to simulate. Yeah, let's continue simulating. See what ends up happening. See if this team could actually find itself. Because that was nice to win 4 games to start this episode, but then to lose 4 straight, it was like, ooh. We have 3 games against Detroit this month as well, so that will be big in dictating who's going to be leading our division at the end of February. So let's go 1 week at a time. First week of February, we lose the first game, tie the second game, tie the third game, and lose the 4th game. Yikes. Those ties are okay, but it's still a little bit risky. Yeah, something is still not super great with this team. We'll go another week and see if we can find our wins again. Come on, guys. Please just win games. There's a tie, a win, and a win. Okay, 3 straight wins and another tie. That's good. That's good. We are now still first place in our division. We are 3 points up on the Red Wings, but we have played 2 more games than them. The Blues have fallen off a little bit in the last little bit again. So that's pretty big for us. Let's go these 3 games. Another one against Detroit coming up. Islanders have fired their head coach, all right. We win against Detroit 8-0, 7-2 against LA, and 4-1 against Vancouver. So we're on a 6-game win streak. Now all of a sudden, okay, now we're at least starting to make up some room here as the division leaders. I don't know if it's great necessarily to win the division, but we are now 31-22, 8-1, which is great. So we just got to keep this up, and we should be hypothetically a playoff team. 2 more games left this month. Another win there. And another win there where we scored 8 goals. I don't think Seabrook was injured, right? As I thought I just put him back in the lineup. So it must have been like a day-to-day thing, right? Yeah, it was. Okay. Wow, okay. So this team has all of a sudden found itself completely. We are on a nice little 8-game winning streak to end off February, which is absolutely huge for our confidence. And hopefully that means our plus-minuses and stuff like that are getting better. Spezza all of a sudden is out of nowhere too with points. He's now leading the team with 81 points through 64 games. So our top line's probably still carrying, my guess, but we're in a pretty good spot. We're almost 10 points up. Actually, we're 11 points up on the Red Wings with only 2 games in hand. So the Blues fell off a cliff in this last little bit of this episode, and the Red Wings have kind of maintained themselves. We've definitely dominated to get ourselves into a really good spot. So we might not need to make any adjustments going forward like we were thinking we might need to. We are still in the 4th spot in the Western Conference. However, that might be the best spot to finish in for us. We're still a pretty good offensive team based on the other teams in the playoffs at the moment. Goals against, we are actually really good defensively now. We are the 2nd best defensive team, it looks like, in the playoffs right now at the moment. Power play percentage looks good. Penalty kill looks good. Yeah, I think everything is going right to plan right now for this team. So I think we're going to keep the team the same and not make any trades this season. It might be risky. I actually should take a look at how Pavelski's plus-minus looks like now. Like, how does the third line look like in plus-minus? That's what I want to know. See if they've adjusted. So -9 still for Comrie, but that was a lot better than it was at the beginning of the episode. Pavelski's down to -6. I believe he was -8 before. Winnick's still on -11. So that third line is still kind of getting slapped in terms of goals against. But they have improved a little bit in terms of offensive numbers. I think I'm going to keep it the same and just hope that it gets better. I think I'm going to. Because considering we're one of the better defensive teams, it's just one line. Hopefully they get themselves going in the playoffs if we get there, though. Which at this rate, I think we should be able to easily get there. Okay, well, let's advance to a day after the deadline and take a look at what trades the AI decides to make, because that will be interesting. I don't think we're going to make any trades. I know it's a little bit of a risk not making any trades. Actually, you know what? I'm going to jump into the deadline and see if there's any options, but I don't think I'm going to make any trades unless there's something crazy that's like, oh, I need this as my third line center. Like, Michael Pekka's too expensive, I would say. Richard Zednik's not a center. Stumple is a third line center, doesn't make sense. Mike York is a third line center, doesn't make much sense. Saku Koivu is a third line center, wouldn't make sense. He's probably a top 6 anyways guy at this point, right? I can't even take a look from this point. Is he listed as a second liner? Doesn't even say. I gotta double check if he's a second liner. I don't think Koivu is what I'm looking for anyways. He's not the best defensive player in the world. So he is listed as a second line forward, but he is dropping off a cliff. There already been a trade. Wow, okay. Glenn Murray already just got dealt. Yeah, Koivu would be the only one, but he signed for 4 years. I just don't think it makes really much sense for us. So I'm not going to make any trades, and I'm interested to see what ends up happening in terms of this deadline, because it's always fun to see what trades the AI decides to make with these throwback rosters. All right, so the first blockbuster, Christian Huselius heads to Buffalo from the Rangers for 2 second-round picks. I believe that's back-to-back deadlines that Huselius has been dealt, if I'm not mistaken, or at least a couple deadlines that he's been dealt at. So there is one trade. Another blockbuster one, so LA gets a second, some guy named Battaglia, not Bates Battaglia, some D Battaglia guy, and a fourth, Colorado getting Joseph Stumple, so Colorado loading up with another good center. Any other blockbuster trades? Yes, one more. Brian McCabe has been dealt to the Edmonton Oilers for a second, a third, and some goalie prospect named Camper. And another blockbuster too. Detroit acquires 2 generated guys for Mike York, who heads to the New York Islanders. That's actually kind of insane. Mike York used to play for the Islanders back in the earlier 2000s. I think it was like 2006-07 or 05-06 he was with them. But that's kind of neat. I'm kind of surprised that Detroit's deciding to offload Mike York, though, when they're in a playoff mix. It's kind of interesting. So those are the blockbusters, but was there anything else that kind of slid under the radar? Let's take a look at the AI trades, see if they've done anything crazy. Okay, so Sergei Berzin getting dealt to Ottawa for some third-rounders and a prospect. Mike Greer to Anaheim with, I think that's, Jason Williams and Randy Robitaille. All right. Nat Domicelli to Carolina. St. Louis gets Jeremy Roenick. That's kind of weird. And Mark Eaton. Okay. So Jeremy Roenick getting dealt late in his career from the Yotes this time around to St. Louis. What else we got here? Hal Gill going to Vancouver. So Vancouver's trying to load up, which is kind of cool, considering they started off so bad in the series. Jorgen Janssen getting dealt to Pittsburgh. Yeah, looks like Detroit's offloading a lot, which is kind of surprising with the spot that they're in at the moment. Tampa has acquired Yannick Perreault and Jared Stoll from Toronto. Toronto getting back some prospect in a second. We saw about Brian McCabe. Derek Morris got dealt to the Islanders. Okay. We saw the Stumple deal. We saw the Huselius one. Schaefer gets dealt to Philly from Detroit. Yeah, Detroit's definitely trying not to make the playoffs now. The Rangers have acquired Nick Antropov in a third, so Antropov going to the Rangers where he actually played, which is pretty cool. Scatchard and Kronwall go to Colorado, so Nick Kronwall is on the Avs, okay. Those are some generated guys, and Steve Passmore going to Montreal for Yannick Tremblay and Mike Motto, who head to Boston. I think Mike Motto might have played in Boston's system at one point, but I'm not too sure. Daryl Sador going to Carolina from Detroit. Ottawa gets Corey Stillman, Scott Walker, and Radislav Sushi, so 2 of our former players, and then Corey Stillman going back to where he actually played in real life at one point. Actually, it was right around this point in time that he was on Ottawa, I think, too. Montreal got some prospects back in return for those guys. Dane Hamhuis going to Anaheim. Okay, that's a pretty interesting one. Glenn Murray, Mikhail Samuelson, and a goalie prospect going to Colorado for some prospect in a third. Let's say Zhamnov and Pat Falloon getting dealt to Carolina. So Zhamnov late into his career getting dealt from Chicago. And those are all the trades that end up happening. All right. Interesting. So I wouldn't say anything super crazy, but still some movement nonetheless. All right, let's get the rest of the season simulated and see if we make it back to the playoffs. We should be able to, unless we go on an 8-game losing streak after winning 8 in a row. But Detroit offloading a lot of their good players, they shouldn't be able to catch us, which means we should be in a prime spot to make the playoffs because of that. All right, so let's go halfway through the month. Let's go to the 17th, take it a little bit slower. Tom Gilbert is on waivers. That's actually not a bad player on waivers. Do I need a depth defenseman at the moment? Like, Tom Gilbert's literally a 78 at 24. He's got high top 6 potential. Like, he's not the most insane player, but do I want Tom Gilbert? 13 points, 65 games. That's really not that bad. Really good player in the AHL playoffs last year. I don't think I really need... I would have to basically send down an Orpik to the AHL, though. And an Orpik would be on waivers, basically. I don't think he's much of an upgrade over Brooks Orpik, unfortunately. So I'm going to just decline that. I would claim him, but Brooks Orpik's already our guy for depth. So I'll just let the Oilers hold on to him. I'm kind of surprised, though, that he was waived. Ooh, a bad start to this month. Of course, after I mentioned about losing 8 in a row, we literally did not win a single game over that next little bit of stretch. Like, that's 6 games where we didn't have a single win in. Oh boy. Team is definitely making this dramatic. The Red Wings are closing in on us again on points. Oh man, why is this team so inconsistent? Like, we're definitely going to find our consistency in the playoffs, you'd think, right? But literally, we won an 8-game winning streak before the trade deadline, and I was like, at that point, it made me confident that our team is going to be good enough for the rest of the season. But that last 6 games, not so much. Not so much at all. Let's see if we can respond to that. We have another 3 games. We got Vancouver, Ottawa, and St. Louis. Can we get some wins? There's one. Marcus Sedin has been injured again? Are you kidding me? Well, this might be the story of this series, is Marcus Sedin just does not stay healthy. He tears his groin. He will miss the first few rounds of the playoffs. He will not be back till, like, probably the Cup Finals almost if we get there. Wow. I don't think I've ever had a goalie so injury prone. Now, the good thing is we have Jimmy Howard still and we didn't trade him away, so we're going to rely on a young Jimmy Howard who's never played an NHL game yet, I think. And also Brust. I'm kind of glad we held on to Brust, because if we didn't, this might be more awkward than it currently is, but wow. Sedin getting injured, huh? Was not expecting that to happen. And that does give Mahalik at least some time to play in the AHL a little bit as the rest of the season goes on, but losing your number 1 goalie for the rest of the season is not ideal. But looks like we're still winning games, which is good as of late, okay? Wow. Okay, we do have some more games against Chicago, the Rangers, and the Sharks. Let's go to the end of March. Looks like we should be clinching the playoff spot relatively soon because we're now on a good winning streak again. And of course, after I said that, we lost. But still, we have won a total of 6 of our last 7 games after that weird little stretch. So, yeah, this team is very inconsistent, but we are going to be playoff bound. We have already clinched a playoff spot right now, which is great. So, at least we will be going back to the playoffs again for hopefully a chance to win the Stanley Cup without our number 1 goaltender. So we have 5 games left of the season. We got Flyers, we got the Yotes, St. Louis, Edmonton, and Vancouver. Let's see if we could lock up our division. So first 3 games, let's see what we got here. OT loss, and a tie. Not ideal, but we have clinched the division. Okay, yeah, this is a very weird season. So 39, 26, 10, and 5. We got 2 games left. Let's just finish those ones up since we've already clinched the division. But, yeah, this has definitely been a season where I don't really know what to think of our team, as the Rangers have fired their head coach. There we go. We finished 39, 27, 11, and 5. Yeah, it's one of the weirdest records I think I've seen. The Red Wings also do make the playoffs, despite offloading a lot of players at the deadline. So now that they offloaded a lot of players, they're going to find a way to win the Stanley Cup, my guess. But Jason Spezza leading us in points with 102. 20 goals, 82 assists. Wow. That's impressive. That might be our first 100-point player, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look at our team stats here for the season. So, we finished as the 10th best team in the entire league. But you go to the Western Conference and we had locked down that 4th spot, which is interesting. So, that's just because we won the division. Alright, so 10th best team in the entire league. In terms of goals for per game, we were not a top 10 offensive team. We fell out of that a little bit, so kind of mid in terms of offense. Goals against per game, though, we were tied for the best defensive team, even with Sedin's injury, which is kind of insane. So 2.61 goals per game. I don't know who ends up winning the Jennings because of that, because we allowed the same amount of goals. I would assume they give it to the Sharks because they won more games. That's my guess. And the fact that they won the President's Trophy. But we were a great defensive team still, which is kind of interesting. Power play percentage, we are actually the number 1 team on the power play as well, despite having kind of a mid offense, which is kind of an interesting stat. And our penalty kill was one of the better ones too. It was top 6 in the league, 85.3%. 11 short-handed goals this year as well, which is one of the most in the league, just behind Boston. 21, 13, 6, and 1 on home ice. 18, 14, 5, and 4 on the road, so not that great of a road team. And we're 4, 2, 2, and 2 in our last 10 games. If anything's going to happen this year, I think we're going to be a really weird cheese team in the playoffs. That's my guess. So in terms of player stats, Spezza on 102 points. We saw that. 20 goals, 82 assists. That's a career best, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. His best since he was in the OHL. Leg one on 58 points. Yeah, that's a bit of a regression year, but a plus 27 is good. A little bit of regression on points, but plus minus is great. That's nice from Legwand. Comrie on 47 points ain't too bad, but minus 12. He also had 19 power play points, so back-to-back years with good power play stats, but last year he was definitely a lot more effective for our team. Lacoste on 21 points, not bad, but minus 12 as well. Pavelski 19 points, minus 8, so definitely we're a little bit more top 6 heavy on our roster, it seems like. Left wing side of things, Marita on 88 points, 35 goals. Pretty good year from Steven Marita. That is not the best year of his career, but still, it's a really solid year. And he's still considered, like, he's kind of struggling to score 40 goals this season, which is not what I was expecting. But he did have 3 short-handed goals this season, which is pretty nice. So, does help us also outside of the power play, it looks like, which is good. Hartnell on 69 points, that's pretty good, plus 21. Nagy 59 points, even 0. And then you have Rene Bourque on 13 points and minus 16. So our fourth line was definitely not super effective this year like it was last year. Then in terms of our right wingers, Hayden Van Allen had a fantastic year. 55 goals and 101 points, plus 54. This guy has turned out to be the best player on this team over the Karate Kid and Marita, as you can see. Yeah, that's his first 50-goal season of his career. First 100-point season, and he's only 21 years old. He has been great. He also had 3 shorthanded goals for us this season, too. So he's become an all-around, a really, really solid player on this team. And hopefully he continues that into the playoffs. Because last year in the playoffs, he was our best player. So it would be nice to see him doing that again. Parker Winnick, only 16 points in his rookie year. I thought he was going to bring more offense as a power forward, but he really didn't do that. Also being a minus 9 kind of sucks, too. And then we had Christoph Artmeyer, who had 10 points, minus 16. Not the best rookie year for Artmeyer. And finally, Okobasu only played 4 games and was minus 6 in those, so he was not super great either. But in general, from our forward group, very impressed with Spezza, Van Allen, Marita. I would say I'm impressed still with the second line as well, in terms of their stats. But like guys like Comrie and all that, they need to be much better defensively in the playoffs if we want to go far. Because that's an underlining problem for sure. Defensively, Weber on 37 points, 17 goals. Plus 21. That's a pretty good year for Shea Weber. Like, not the hugest offensive performance, but better than last year in offense. Plus minus is worse, but still being a plus 21 is good. So, he is turning into that goal-scoring defenseman he was in real life. Ryan Suter, 29 points, plus 14. Daly on 28 points, plus 8. Trevor Daly was good. Wesley Corzini had 14 goals as well and only 7 assists, 21 points. So Seabrook on 20 points, Jacques on 10 points, and Orpik was minus 3 through 6 games. In general, I'm pretty impressed with the defensive core because none of the guys that actually played fully were minus, but somehow our bottom 6 was really badly minus. Goaltending, Marcus Sedin was fantastic up until he got injured. Like, he was probably up there for the Vezina, I guess, if he would have played the rest of the season, but 32, 21, and 2, 5 shutouts, a 913 save percentage, and 2.58 goals against. He continues to show that he's a great regular season goaltender because that was pretty much just as good as he was last year, but then he got injured again. Like, he's never played 70 games in a season at this point in time. And yeah, his playoff numbers suck, so maybe it's a good thing that he's injured at the same time. Maybe relying on Brust or somebody instead, like Jimmy Howard, would be better. But obviously, it does suck to lose your number 1 goalie once again. Like, that might be the last time we see him in this series, depending on how far we go. And then Marshall Brust was solid. A 907 save percentage isn't terrible, but it's not great. The goals against is good. 5, 6, and 3 record. He likely would start the playoffs, but Jimmy Howard actually was pretty good in 4 games. 932 save percentage. I'll probably start Brust, but on a short leash, and then maybe we give Jimmy Howard an opportunity, since Sedin will not be back until probably round number 3, my guess, at best. In terms of stats around the league, let's take a look at who led the NHL in points this season. That will be Joe Thornton. 122 points this year for Joe Thornton. Next closest was Brian Rolston, his teammate, with 113. You also had Prospel up there for Ottawa, Spezza for us up there, and Van Allen as well for us up there. So we had 2 of the best point getters in the league, but Joe Thornton definitely the best by a long shot. Best goal scorer of the season was Brian Rolston with 59, beating out our Hayden Van Allen by 4 goals, but Brian Rolston, a big year for him next to Joe Thornton. Jerome McGinley was also up there with 55, and same with Yashin. So there is the forward stats. Defensively, the best defenseman for points was Yanni Nienema with 78 points this year. But there's also Tverdovsky who has a better plus minus, but I don't know if he'll win it. But those two guys will both hit 70. Dan Boyle is up there as well. Brian Berard, Scott Niedermayer, Chris Pronger. Those guys are starting to drop off a bit because they are 34 years old now at this point. I mean, actually, Pronger hasn't dropped off at all, but Scott Niedermayer definitely has. Yannick Tremblay up there as well for Boston. He was traded at the deadline, wasn't he? Yeah, he was. That's interesting. In terms of goaltenders, best goaltender for wins was Marc-Andre Fleury in San Jose with 46 wins. Most shutouts by a goalie was Ryan Miller in Edmonton with 6. Best save percentage by a starter, Jamie Storr in Pittsburgh with a .922 save percentage. So he probably wins the Vezina because of that. Next closest would be Backstrom with a .919, Lalime with a .918, Fleury with a .915. Vokun, who played 73 games with a .914. Damn. So Sedin, even though he was good, he was not even close to being the best, I would say. So that's unfortunate. Goals against per game. The best goalie in terms of goals against was also Jamie Storr. So likely Jamie Storr is your Vezina winner for 07-08, which is interesting. I did see, though, that this one goalie had an 8.13 goals against average somehow through 3 games. That's insane. I don't think I've ever seen a goalie with that bad of stats. He allowed 13 goals on 62 shots. That's outrageous. Let's check if there was any goalie goals for fun. I don't know if there will be. No, there is not. Okay. Best rookie this season is going to be Blake Jenner of the Flames with 56 points. Clifford Flynn for the Leafs, and that's it pretty much. Everybody else was below 50 points. All right. All right, so the question now is, who are we playing in round 1, and will we actually have a chance in the playoffs to win as well? Like, I know we had some weird regular season stats, but does that mean better playoff stats? I honestly don't know. We're going to be taking on the Dallas Stars in the first round. They went 38, 32, 10-2 in the regular season. They're also 7-3 in their last 10 games going into playoffs. Meanwhile, we're 4-2, 2-2. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. Both of us had really similar regular seasons, it looks like. We just had a bit more extra frame points, basically, and one more win in regulation, so to speak. So let's take a look at those stats here from Dallas in the regular season compared to us, and then we'll take a look at their roster. So if we go to Western Conference here, we were the 4th best team. They were the 6th best team. They scored 3.06 goals per game. We scored 3.28, so we were better offensively than they were. We were much better defensively. Their power play was actually pretty good. It was only 2.2% worse than ours. And penalty kill, they actually had a really good penalty kill this season. That's their standout thing. They were 1.2% better than us on the PK. They scored 7 shorthanded goals. Weren't very good on home ice, but they were okay on the road. So the question is, what does their roster look like at this point in time? Because I would assume they don't have guys like Yuri Letton and Mike Modano really anymore. They might still have Brendan Morrow, but we've never played Dallas in the playoffs before, I'm pretty sure. So this could be an interesting matchup. I know that they did win a cup, I'm pretty sure, early on into this franchise mode, if I remember right. So what do they look like? Top line, Zach Parise at 23 years old. So I was not expecting Zach Parise to be there. He's playing with Curtis Brown and Blake Cizikas. So 2 younger guys on this top line, both who were drafted within the top 20. And then you have Curtis Brown, who's 32 years old. Curtis Brown as a top line center is a little bit of a weird one. He never was a top line center in real life. He was more of a 2nd/3rd line guy, my guess. Maybe bottom 6 center mostly. But he was very good defensively. So that's an interesting top line. Second line, Jesper Brunstrom. Rich Peverley's in Dallas. Like, he played actually not around this time. He was in like 2014, if I remember right. But that's still kind of interesting, and he made his way to Dallas. You also have Martin Lapointe. So their top 6 is a mix of younger guys and 2 vets, which is kind of an interesting look. Third line, Junior Langenbrunner. So who knows, this guy could be related to Jamie Langenbrunner. Former 4th overall pick. He's a grinder. Okay. Alexander Dagg and Dustin Brown is over there. Wow, yeah, this is a weird team. Way different than they would have been in year 1. Scotty Upshaw, Curtis DeBoer, and Dalton Crombie. Yeah, this is a really young team. So their only veterans are Dagg, Martin Lapointe, and Curtis Brown on offense. Everybody else is relatively young. So definitely probably after winning the Stanley Cup or winning a cup. Did they win a cup? I don't remember. I think they got at least to a finals. They definitely tore it down quite a bit, and they've drafted quite well. They brought in some younger guys. It's an interesting team. I would definitely say they don't have too much weakness, other than maybe DeBoer. Defensively, ooh, wow. They actually have a good young defenseman, too, and Johan Rensfeldt. Gustavs Kolsnik, who's also 20 years old only. Shane Knighty's there with Alexander Gagne, who's an 83, medium elite. Damn, they've drafted a lot of good players. Nico Kapanen's playing defense, which makes no sense. I don't know if they have an injury, but that does make sense. And then Joe DePenta is on defense. So they have a couple more veteran defenders, but they also have some young defensemen too. Yeah, this is a really interesting structured team. Like a lot of vets, or a couple vets at least, to help with the younger guys, and a lot of good young talent in it. Like I could definitely see why they made the playoffs. And then goaltenders, they have David Abisher at 30 years old and Patrick Lalime. So no young goalie, but they do have two vets. And then in terms of their depth forwards, they do have an injury to Dion Phaneuf. So Dion Phaneuf would also be in their defensive core, so another young guy. And Patrick Osgood as well is there. So if Dion Phaneuf comes back, Kapanen would be out. And then basically they'd have a lot more younger defenders. They'd have 4 of the 6 being young. So they're probably an unexperienced team, I would assume, right? Yes, Parise has never played in the playoffs before this. What about, who's the oldest young guy on their team? Yeah, it would probably be that 24-year-old that I saw, Dalton Crombie. Let's see, has he ever played? No. So Dallas has never made the playoffs, I guess, in this generation of young talent that they have. That's very intriguing. Huh. What about Curtis Brown, who's maybe been there for... Well, he's only been there for the 1 year. Had 80 points this season after only 25 last year. That's actually really impressive. So, yeah, I guess they brought in some good veterans to really help out with those young guys, huh? All right. Well, I definitely think we might have the upper hand in a way just based on, like, experience. But at the same time, like, I don't really know what to make of that team really at all. Like, how long is Dion Phaneuf out for? I think it depends on if our goaltending could survive without Sedin. So Sedin won't be back for a month and 13 days. That's really long term. But Dion Phaneuf is out with a concussion, and he'll be back on the 20th. So he will be actually back for the series. I would assume he would be back for like game 4 or 5 based on that. Yeah, it looks like he would be back for game 4 or 5 potentially. So we will see on Dion Phaneuf at some point, but I honestly don't know what to make of that first round matchup. I think it's both pretty even in a sense. Like, they definitely have some good veterans, but they also have a lot of young guys, kind of similar to us, because a lot of our team is kind of young as well, because Marita, Spezza, Van Allen are obviously all really young. Nagy's the oldest guy on this team right now. So it is going to be a battle of young teams pretty much, I think, in this first round matchup, especially on our defensive side of things, because our defense definitely doesn't have a vet. Like, they're kind of similar to what I wanted to build this team up into, having a lot of young talent, but also having some veterans in it to kind of help out with the young guys. So I think they did a really good job. It will be interesting to see who gets to the next round. And in terms of the playoff matchups, Vancouver did not make the playoffs, so they fell out of the playoff mix after I thought they would make it. That's kind of insane. So you got Detroit, Colorado, San Jose, Calgary, us in Dallas, and Anaheim and Edmonton. In terms of the Eastern Conference, you got Boston, Tampa, New Jersey, Carolina, Ottawa, Philly, and Florida, Pittsburgh. So we can get an actual 07-08 Cup Finals if we do not win the Stanley Cup this year. It could end up being Detroit and Pittsburgh, which is kind of cool. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of our National Players Throwback 2000 franchise mode. So in next episode, we'll take it to the first round of the playoffs against the Dallas Stars as we look to get to the second round and hopefully beyond that as well, because this could be one of our last runs of the series. So anything down below, and I'll see you guys next time.